The Department of Justice is alleging some influential right-wing commentators were unwittingly part of a Russian attempt to influence the 2024 election. Those right-wing social media stars say they had no idea their paychecks were allegedly coming from Russia. Federal prosecutors this week charging two Russian state media employees for their role in allegedly funneling nearly $10 million from Russia to a U.S. company that then paid those commentators. Prosecutors say it was part of a Russian disinformation campaign to drive stories, conspiracy theories, and propaganda to favor former President Donald Trump. I'm joined now by Bret Schafer, a disinformation expert and senior fellow at the Alliance for Securing Democracy. Bret, good afternoon to you. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me, Jessica.
This is an elaborate ruse here by Russia, but the Justice Department says these podcasters may not have even known about who was paying for them. I'm just curious, were they so susceptible to this alleged scheme?
You know, I actually buy the fact that they were unaware of what was happening here. I mean, if you read the indictment, the Russians went to some level to conceal their hand here. So they actually had set up a fictitious persona, somebody who was actually a French business person. I mean, they weren't particularly sophisticated with their tradecraft. Apparently, this guy joined a call at the wrong time because he confused time zones in Moscow and Paris. But there clearly was some effort to mislead these contributors about who the funders were of this platform. And frankly, from Russia's perspective, it's better if the contributors don't know that there's a Russian hand in it. I mean, we've seen this throughout history with Russian propaganda. It really works better if the people who are out in front aren't fully aware of their role in the entire scheme. So I actually buy the fact that these contributors were unaware of the fact that this platform was being funded by Russia.
And so as someone who studies disinformation and focuses on it, analyzes it, what is your take on this particular scheme and how dangerous and threatening do you think it was to this election?
Well, I think we have to be sober and level-headed about the threat. I mean, there's no indication that this attempted to keep Americans from voting. There's no indication that this attempted to interfere with any election processes. There's no real indication that it actually changed anyone's political positions. However, this is at least the third or fourth episode in the last few months where one of our adversaries has been caught trying to covertly influence American audiences. And so I think our adversaries understand the stakes in November. They understand our political situation. And so the concern is that they're trying to set themselves up to throw a match into a situation that's already pretty combustible.
Yeah. And so many times, friends, whomever will send a link or send a link in a group chat and like, can you believe this, whatever. I say it over and over again. They get so sick of me saying it, but like, who's your source? Check your sources. You know, trying to fight against any sort of disinformation that's blatant that way. But then this is just three, levels beyond that in terms of propping someone up to spew conspiracy theories that the Russians want out there. But how can your average consumer be smart about what they're consuming?
So there were actually two different cases this week. And so there's another case, this campaign called Doppelganger. And this is something the Russians have been running now for years, which is creating websites to look identical to the websites that you would know and trust. So this week, DOJ took down a website that was spoofing the Washington Post. So that's really difficult as an information consumer. But what you have to do, and this is sort of basic digital literacy, you got to check your domain first. Oftentimes we see bad actors do what's called typo squatting. So all of us have at some point tried to type in Amazon, we get one letter wrong, we're redirected somewhere. Bad actors prey on that. So make sure you're landing on the website that you actually intend to go to. But in terms of this other case, as a consumer, there would be no way for an audience to understand that these podcasters were being funded by Russia because they didn't even understand it. But on the other hand, I think there is a role for influencers in understanding who's funding them, who's behind these platforms, because all of us now at some level are content creators on social media. So if someone reaches out to you, they want you to share a message, they want to fund you, you better know where that money, where the motives are coming from.
And so what does it say to you that now DOJ is taking the steps of prosecuting this case?
It's important, and it's important that they did it now. I mean, if we go back to 2016, the DOJ got dinged because they sat on their hands a bit, because they didn't want to be perceived as attempting to interfere with the election. So I think they ran this case out. They made it very public enough in advance of the election that there wouldn't be the same partisanship around it. So I think it's really important that they did this, that they did it now, and that they unsealed an indictment that really was rich with details.
And just more broadly, again, since you and the Alliance for Securing Democracy are focused on monitoring all of this, what are you finding as we get closer to November? Do you see similar situations like this, maybe not as grand in the scale, but trying to influence voters, how they feel or what they think is truth over fiction?
So Russia has a challenge because this is the first election where they haven't had an overt propaganda channel that can reach Americans. RT America was shut down in 2022. Many of the tech platforms have taken action against RT. So it's harder to find it on YouTube. It's harder to find it on Facebook. So they need to find creative ways to reach Americans. And that in some ways is pretty dangerous because at least RT, you knew who was behind it. But if you're running covert funding into what seems to be an authentic, genuine American production company, much harder to understand that there is perhaps some Russian motives behind it, that there are sort of Russian intentions behind it. And so I think it's just really concerning as we move into November because we are going to see all of these threat actors. And it's not just Russia. The Iranians have attempted to, and I think in one case were successful at hacking into political campaigns. We know other threat actors are very active as well. And so there's a whole range of different foreign adversaries who are attempting to influence American opinion. And it's not just about the candidates that we prefer or the candidates that they may prefer. I think they also want to see us sort of devolve into chaos. So we have to be very careful about the aftermath of the election and not having foreign adversaries radicalize us and leading us towards another January 6th.
And really lean into the divisiveness and so that. All right, Bret Schafer, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.